I just naturally thought of the submarine story in terms like of a week-long drama that was strung out and every day repackaged in a different way with the latest update. And 10 years from now, who's going to remember that?
Well, exactly, and this is an example. This is one of, and I was going to raise this Titanic, submarine trip,
which is pure entertainment, by the way. It was great office talk, great small talk.
Yes. One, it's pegged to the story of the Titanic to begin with. So you already have this kind of background drama and films and the whole thing. But also, I think part of its a big part of its appeal is that it hadn't really happened before. So in a way, it really captured all of our imaginations. Because what happens when you hear about this accident? You're like, you put yourself in the place of the people down there. What if I was down there? What would it be like? What would it happen? What would the collapse of the vessel have been like to experience, assuming, it had not happened so fast that we weren't aware of it. And so I think the media tapped into that kind of sort of that deep imagination, that visceral preoccupation with that emotional preoccupation with the story. And so, and I think that's also the reason why you had a lot of these sort of voices saying, look at how they're focusing on this story, and they're not focusing on the migrants, for instance. Like there had been a recent capsizing of a migrant boat in the Mediterranean, I believe. But the thing is that, and this is the thing with news, there had been a lot of news coverage when the migrant stories had really begun to kind of happen again, sort of in the mid 2010s, and so it did have the same fascination that the sub story did if you go back several years, but they'd milked it, and also we've become desensitized to it now, in the same way that like the Syrian civil war was huge news, and we showed video every day of like Syrian rebels and their battles and everything, and then it just suddenly dropped off because we become habituated. And this is the thing with news. The minute a story is depicted or run a whole bunch of times, whether it's over days or weeks or even months, eventually the public and the news producers will become sort of habituated to it. Like the brain almost sort of tunes it out because it becomes background noise in the way that a refrigerator or a fan will become background noise in an environment. And then they're no longer capturing your attention anymore because your brain is no longer attuned to it. So then they switch the stories. They phase them out when they're no longer new, right? Which is why it's called news. They have to bring in constantly new things. So the sub story, was like pure drama, pure entertainment, tragic, obviously, but at the same for the families and the individuals. But in the grand scheme of things, did it really need to take up that much airtime or coverage, or given that there are other things going on as well?
Did we ever used to have higher quality news than we do today? Has it always been entertainment driven, do you think? Or do you think that's become worse over time, where it's become an entertainment channel? It's become more profit driven.
I think TV, let's use that term because one may not watch on television anymore, but television has always been about entertainment because unlike print or even radio, but let's say print, you've got images and you've got sound, and both are very, very evocative. And they don't really kind of appeal to the intellect, let's say, as reading words might, or So there's always been a kind of an entertainment component to news. I think that the difference now is because it's not just your television, it's your computer, it's your phone, and with the smartphones, you carry them with you all the time, and you could be potentially watching for hours on end. You could be watching YouTube, and so I think there's a lot more of it now, and I think even and this is the sort of the heinous part. I think because back in the day, television didn't really have much competition except for maybe the cinema. Now, news, TV news is competing against the internet. It's competing against non-news content on YouTube, Netflix, all of the other streaming services. So as a result, and I think this is also part of what happened in the sort of the, you know, in the 2010s, is that news became more sensational, more dramatic in an attempt to compete with all these other sources that vie for our attention. And so, because, you know, the news organizations realized that they were losing, they'd started to lose ad revenue that was sort of being sort of diffuse and dispersed towards all these other places. But so there is a business crisis in news, and I think the competition has only made it worse for them. And I think in order to kind of place themselves in their own minds on a level playing field with these other forms of entertainment, they had to become more purely entertainment themselves. So I think that's part of the reason why quality has sort of decreased. Like when I